And welcome back to another episode of Pokemon Knowledge. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now, for everybody out there who bared through that very first stream with no audio, again, super embarrassing, super sorry. But that I deleted that stream. It no longer exists. We'll pretend like it never happened. But what I was talking about, muted, and nobody could hear what I was saying, was earlier today. This morning. I was getting my son ready for daycare, and I get a text around 6:45 in the morning. And the person who texts me show me a screenshot of an item they sold. I'm not going to mention their name because I don't know if they want it to be public, and I don't want to like bid shame anybody. But the item he sold sold at about a 2x valuation of what it should have sold at auction. So already 2x. And then that same item, you could pick it up on Buy It Now for about 70 to 80% less than the person paid for it. So I spent most of my day thinking about that auction, and your brain's going to go the instant places when you think about an item like that sold for at auction 2x what it should have and greater than 80% for that same item at Buy It Now. So the first thing you're going to probably think is okay, this item was clearly shill bidded and that these auction prices don't matter. Well, guess what? Found out that item was purchased, the sale went through, it was not shill bidded. So then the second thing you're probably going to think of is maybe this item has some crazy variant that we never thought about, things like that. And that's why this item has gone for so much money, because there's something going on that we're just not seeing. That's the only reason it went for double what it should have, or greater than 80% more than the nearest Buy It Now listing. And I thought about that for a long time today. And shout out to Dan Catch'Em Collectibles. He had a great video today. And the title of his video was Analysis Paralysis. And that's what I did. I spent a long time just thinking about that one eBay sale and how is that possible? And it's pretty apparent that I think what it boils down to is if you are actively engaged in this hobby, you'll probably just do fine. And I think we try to spin that narrative so much, But the fact of the matter is, if you are just actively engaged in this hobby enough, where you're doing smart decisions, you understand how to find lowest price items, you understand what potentially is overvalued versus undervalued. As long as you're doing those very simple things, right now in this hobby, you might just do fine. And it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science. And I think sometimes we act like it is, or we'll do what Dan talked about. We'll do that analysis paralysis. But the fact of the matter is there's just some people out there who, for whatever reason, they don't compare eBay versus Troll and Toad versus TCG Player. They don't compare Pokemon Center prices of product versus eBay versus TCG versus Troll and Toad. They don't do any of these compare and contrasts. They don't look at sellers' feedback. They're just, in a way, blind sellers. And real quick, shout out to Watery Bear Gang. I love that the Watery Bear Gang has now become a meme, but we have to embrace that. Watery Bear Gang. But it goes back to Dan's video, that analysis paralysis. I spent most of my day thinking about how that item could have sold for the price it did. I think it's just a matter of will be uneducated buyers in this hobby, and especially in this market for the near term. And we talk about it, and we talk about the first sales in PSA 10s of graded cards. Who are the people buying them? I don't know. Never will know. Maybe someday I'll find that person. Somebody will give me the answer why somebody could spend $1,000 for that very first special delivery Charizard graded, knowing that there will be all these to eventually hit the pop report. Things like that. Or that's it. I think it boils down to there's just so much of that going on right now. And one of the places that if you ever are feeling bad about yourself or feel bad about one of the buys you did or maybe some of the things you've been thinking about, just go on Reddit. Go on the Pokemon TCG Reddit page and just look at some of the questions people are asking, some of the topics people are asking. And you'll see a lot of things that are like the obvious stuff. Like people will buy huge bulk lots of clearly fake cards, like glaringly, like the fake gold metal ones. And people will ask questions like, hey, are these fake? And you almost see those Reddit posts in a way, you're almost taken back Is this person just trolling because these cards are so glaringly fake, but they really just don't know? And I think we forget, and shout out the basic trainers in the chat. One thing we talk about all the time is being in the niches of the niches. And that could be one thing, being in the niches of the niches and really going deep down the rabbit hole. And the thing I always make the joke at is if you get deep enough down the rabbit hole and you know why the reverse hollow TV reporter from EX Dragon, why we think that is important. If you're far enough down the rabbit hole to understand why a comment like that makes sense, that's deep down the rabbit hole. That's in the niches of the niches. You're in a very small subset in the entire population of this collecting hobby that even one knows why that matters, or number two even cares about it. That's a big thing too. But now that's being in the niches of the niches. You can just be in the niches of Pokemon, not the niches and niches, just the niches, and you can do fine. And then you keep removing yourself out of every single layer of that niche until eventually you get to that guy on Pokemon TCG Reddit page asking, are those cards clearly fake, knowing that they are. How long does it take to get that group of people? Because the problem is, and it's not really a problem actually, this is a good thing. Anybody who's selling cards into this market, flipping cards, whatever you're doing, it's not a bad thing that that group exists, because they're in reality the largest portion of this hobby. And, you can go and break down very, very simple terminology. I think a great video that would exist maybe someday is you just talk about like the history of Pokemon TCG, and just maybe this is a video I need to make. I'm not very good at editing videos, but like just do a video editing talking about the history of Pokemon TCG. Talk about, and we'll do English, just talk about the difference between first edition, shadowless, unlimited. Talk about like potential print runs, what could shadowless have been? Could it have just been added the stamps? Variations of shadowless, variations of like, base set Pikachu. Talk about like E3 stamp versus 99 Poketour. It's just real basic stuff like that. Talk about unlimited. What is unlimited? Talk about, first edition stamps. Then you talk just Pokemon. You could talk about base set Jungle, Fossil, base set 2, Team Rocket, and then you talk about Gym Heroes, Gym Challenge, or then start talking about the Neogenis, or Neogenis to grade in a 10. What do print lines mean? Talk about very simple things in this hobby. Just talk about corners, edges, surface, centering. Why does that matter? Things that we take for granted all the time. Or after Neo Destiny, what happened there? Well, reverse hollows were introduced in Legendary Collection, but more importantly, before that obvious point is first edition stamps went away. So then Legendary Collection, Expedition, Aquapolis, Skyridge, there's no first edition stamps on this stuff. And again, we're just talking English. Yes, for Skyridge, you could talk about like Mysterious Mountain and stuff like that. The Japanese version, there's still first edition stamps. But then get out of that and just talk about early Nintendo stuff. Why is Skyridge rare? Why did Nintendo, take over Pokemon? People forget that Wizard of the Coast they had a copyright, or a patent on trading card games. Something that you don't even think is possible. And like all the legal issues that happened between, Skyridge being released in May of 2003 and talking about Ruby Sapphire. And why do we care about early Nintendo stuff? And like Ruby Sapphire introduced EX Pokemon. And, you think about Ruby Sapphire and you think about like some of those big guys in there. You think about the Mewtwo. You think about the Lapras. Why do there's a Chansey in there. Why do we care about these cards? And then go through the EXs all the way up until you get to then Team Rocket returns. And why do we care about Team Rocket returns? Because that introduced Gold Stars. What did Gold Stars do? It actually created rarity to these cards, something that we had more or less never seen. Sure, in Aquapolis and Skyridge, there were crystal cards. And why do crystal cards matter? Because they gave a little bit of a rarity factor to it. Maybe one per booster box, maybe not. And if you did get one crystal per box, we saw real, true scarcity in a potentially 1 out of every 72 booster packs. Rewind to base set, just unlimited base set, your chances of pulling a holo was 1 out of every 3 packs. There were 16 holos in base set. One of those, that Machamp, came only in the 2-player starter deck. So you're going to pull 15 holos out of packs. And out of those 15, if you bought a booster box, you are statistically going to pull 12 of those hollows. This is all stuff that's interesting. And just, you could do like a real watered down video, and then you get out of, like the Nintendo timeline, and you talk about Power Keepers, and you talk about the, Vaporeon, Flareon, Jolteon being the gold stars, or go a little bit before that and talk about like the gold star dogs, not the evolution dogs, but the gold star dogs from Unseen Forces. And why does that story matter? Because now look at why, in a weird way, Pokemon, if you understand the niches, you will find one thing that happens over and over again is history repeats itself. And you look at what happened with the Gold Star dogs. And now you look at what's happened with Fusion Strike. And we'll talk about what happened with Fusion Strike. But before that, then you can talk about like Diamond and Pearl. And what did Diamond and Pearl do that was so awesome? Diamond and Pearl introduced level X cards. But not only that, it introduced really made secret rares a thing. And sure, there was a Dark Raichu in Team Rocket, which is number 83 in the set, and sure, technically that's that first ever secret rare, depending on how you look at that first edition stamp Ivy Pikachu. But really, you start to look at Diamond and Pearl, and you look at these level X's, and you look at like your mysterious treasures and stuff like this, or like I said, secret rares now, and you look at like your Stormfront, and you go, wow, reimagine artworks for Charmander and Charmeleon and Charizard, reimagined for Arita, like that original base set artwork. And then you get out of your Diamond Pearls. And then you start to look at like your Heart Gold Soul Silvers, and you look at the Primes, and you start to look at like legend cards being introduced, top and bottom halves of cards, the Ho-Ho and Lugia, and you just go, you know what? That's pretty freaking awesome. And then you look at your Heart Gold Soul Silver base, and you look at your Unleashed and your Undaunted, and then you move into the Platinums, and again, secret rares being a cool thing. And then you look at the SLs in your Platinums, and you're like, wow, SLs are pretty cool. And then you get out of your Platinums, and you look at Black and White base, and you say, what did Black and White base do? Black and White base introduced full arts. And then even in Emergent Powers, you still had the Thundurus and Tornadus, and that's the weakest set. And you appreciate every single one of these cards in every single era. And you do that, and it becomes fun. But not everyone cares about that stuff. Most people in this hobby could fucking care less. They don't care. And that's just the truth. Now, do I feel that if you look at Pokemon kind of like that, and you start to look back, and you think about every single set, and you get excited thinking about everyone, there's not a single set you can mention that I don't have a favorite card in. You name the set, I still have a favorite card. Shout out to Professor Oak. If Professor Oak's out there, everybody shits on Crimson Invasion all the time. You think about that Pikachu at the beach card, it's just a regular common. Beautiful Pikachu artwork, Crimson Invasion, one of the more lackluster sets. Good card. And you think about and the crazy thing about Pokemon is you just have huge gaps in time where some cards don't even exist. And, when I mentioned Crimson Invasion, I think about Crimson Invasion, and I go, what's the hit in Crimson Invasion? It's probably that hyper rare Gyarados. And when you stop to think about it, and you go, when was there a hyper rare Gyarados before Crimson Invasion? In all of Black and White, can you think of one full art Gyarados? I think there's a hollow Gyarados in Dragon's Exalted. Remove out of Dragon's Exalted, I can't think of a single Gyarados hollow. Thinking of all of Black and White, I can't think of a single Gyarados hollow. And Gyarados is a big fan favorite Pokemon. There's definitely not any full art trainers or anything in all of Black and White of Gyarados. And then you say, when was the last good Gyarados? And you keep pulling yourself back until you get to Heart Gold Soul Silver base and the number 123, that red Gyarados. I talked about it on a live not too long ago. It's between Heart Gold Soul Silver base and maybe one Gyarados in Dragon Exalted that's not a full art. It's definitely just a hollow, and I don't even know if that exists. I'm going to guess it does. It's probably a rare hollow. Remove Dragon's Exalted hollow Gyarados. There's not another full art Gyarados all the way up till Crimson Invasion. So then when people say, Crimson Invasion sucks. There's no good cards. It's like, well, it had this hyper rare Gyarados. And I think it's cool because we hadn't seen a hyper rare Gyarados or a full art Gyarados for the last better half of like a greater than half a decade. That shit's impressive. That shit's fun. So, Professor Oak could find excitement in that Pikachu common. I find excitement in that hyper rare Gyarados because there's none that exist before that. So Catch 'em All Collectibles said Breakpoint had a full art Gyarados, right? Yes, it did. And then I guess technically, well, no, it wasn't Breakpoint. It was Ancient Origins. You're right. Ancient Origins has the guy holding the fishing pole with the Gyarados sticking out of the water. That's Ancient Origins. So you are right. Are those really considered hollows, though, in Ancient Origins? But no, you're right. So, see? That's fun, too. So Ancient Origins has the Gyarados. You said Breakpoint, but no, it's Ancient Origins. But you're right. But still, like, at least for chase cards, that's not the chase card. That's just a regular hollow in Ancient Origins. It's still a cool hollow, but it's not the chase. But no. And it's funny. This is what I like to do, though. I like to sit down. I like to think through this stuff. And this is fun. The fact that I could think of a card like that, and then Dan mentions Breakpoint, but I do think it's Ancient Origins. It's fun, though. It's fun thinking about all this stuff, And I really enjoy it. I enjoy all this. But this goes back to, like, that. Maybe this isn't analysis paralysis, but this is just enjoying the hobby. But for the most part, the greater majority of this hobby, I just don't think they care about this stuff enough. They just are willing to buy, like, whatever they see at auction. They don't care to do those comparisons. They don't care to do those comps. As long as those buyers are there and they're pushing up prices of products from now until whenever that potentially ends, if ever. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell you if that's going to end anytime soon. But if you have those people pushing up these prices, just, buying products at double what they should sell for it at auction and 80% more than the closest buy it now, as long as those people exist, as long as those sales keep happening, we can just be in it for the long term. Now, what does it take to stop that? Well, the scary part is you're putting a lot of faith and a lot of your buys into maybe people that are just not super familiar with the market. But I look at something like, Brilliant Stars right now. Brilliant Stars, we are getting ready to be in the heat and the middle of the reprint. And I told you, analysis paralysis, I think about Brilliant Stars booster boxes all the time. What are those prices going to get down to? I'll tell you right now. If Brilliant Stars booster box, if the reprint that comes is very lackluster, and the cheapest that people are able to pick them up at distribution is $120 a booster box, and your P Football Pete's and your big monster sellers are not fire selling these things, this is going to come a point where you could pick those babies up at $143 on PokemonCenter.com, and that might be a good buy. How crazy that is to say. This is the point in the hobby we're at right now. Where buying Brilliant Stars on PokemonCenter.com could potentially be a play. Think about this market. The fact that I even uttered those words, that's something I don't even want to talk about on a video, is to talk that Brilliant Stars could potentially be a play at PokemonCenter.com. But I'll tell you what, and it's the same thing I've talked about with Brilliant Stars booster boxes over and over and over again. The second that Brilliant Stars booster boxes are no longer available on PokemonCenter.com, I think those babies are going to run. I do. I think that the demand for a set like that is still very strong. I think it's a great set. Bunch of Charizards. Great character rare subset. First set that introduced character rares since Cosmic Eclipse. Most people rank it in their at least top 2 or 3 of Sword and Shield block, assuming you, and then maybe even a little bit higher if you're not talking specialty sets. I know a lot of people throw like Celebrations into their top 3. Celebrations is a specialty set. Crown Zenith is a specialty set. So removing Celebrations, removing Crown Zenith, and you start to rank all these sets, like Lost Origins is up there. That's a good set, but it doesn't have that Charizard chase. And then obviously a lot of people like Evolving Skies. Me, Evolving Skies is number 2 on my list. Brilliant Stars is number 1. That is a set that has the potential to have legs underneath it and just run. Analysis paralysis right there, though, right? We get so... And I've seen people comment on videos and they talk about, like, you spent an hour talking about saving $10, $15 on a booster box. And it's like, yeah, you're probably right. I don't really have a good rebuttal to that. It's like, you're right. Spend a lot of time spending a lot of brain power thinking about the difference between $10 to $15 on a booster box. At the end of the day, does that matter? I don't know. You know, where I think is I want to always be comfortable in where I have my positions in Pokemon. That's the thing. I think that's when you really peel back every level, every layer to like, why do I think about things the way I do? It's like, the reason why is because I just want to feel comfortable with the prices I bought at. And the only way you're normally going to feel comfortable with the prices you bought at is if you bought at either the low or close to the low. You think about a lot of products. You know, if you bought at the low for every single Sword and Shield booster box, you're doing great. Think about on the opposite end of the spectrum. If you bought at the highs of every single Sword and Shield booster box, how are you doing? That's scary. Or specialty set. Imagine, you know, you picked up Darkness Ablaze ETBs at 123. Imagine you picked up Vivid Voltage booster boxes at 220 to 280. Imagine you picked up Shining Fates at 120. Imagine you picked up Battle Styles at 180. Imagine you picked up Chill and Rain at 160. Those aren't great places to be at. And those were all realized prices. Those are all sold prices. That's what those booster boxes are selling at. I wouldn't feel comfortable at any of those because then you would feel kind of crappy about, you know, your Battle Styles position or your Chill and Rain position, where like you think about a set like Chill and Rain. Everybody should feel really happy right now about where they're sitting with Chill and Rain. But if your price was 160 a booster box, like you don't feel great about that. So I think that's where a lot of my analysis paralysis comes in, is because I want to feel comfortable with whatever I buy at the prices I buy stuff at. I think that's what it boils down to. Maybe it's just too many watery beers. I don't know. Give me let me know if you're part of the watery beer gang in the chat, though. But yeah, I think that's what it boils down to, is the analysis paralysis can be crippling. But the problem is, and this is the thing that is almost the hardest thing to equate and make it so it makes sense. I really, 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 really enjoy the analysis paralysis. If I didn't really truly enjoy that, I don't think I'd be making these videos. And I think there's some people out there enjoy like breaking down and just talking Pokemon. And sometimes talking Pokemon, you can only going to talk about so many things for so much before you're going to start repeating yourself or start talking about the same topics. But the one thing beautiful about modern Pokemon is modern Pokemon, you always get to live in the today. Where, sure, I could talk, you know, in today's video, I talked about, you know, Heart Gold Soul Silver base, Black and White base, Platinum. We talked about like all these sets nobody ever talks about because we mentioned Stormfront, I mentioned the Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. How much more is there to talk about Stormfront? How many videos can you make talking about Stormfront? You probably can't make that many. So the conversations are eventually just going to go to whatever is relevant, whatever you can talk about. Whatever you can talk about is modern. And the best conversation to have is that speculating in modern, especially in both the short, the near term, and the long term. And that very short term being that super first to market flippability of a lot of these graded cards. We are currently living in the exact moment of Scarlet and Violet base returns hitting the market. Miriam full art, not the alternative art. Keep in mind there are two Miriam cards in Scarlet and Violet. You have the alternative art one, and then you just have the full art one. Shout out to Danzar TCG, sold his at auction, very first one to go to auction. I think it had 66 bids, ended up selling at $337. I have a feeling that will not be the all-time low of that card. I have a very strong feeling that the all-time low for a graded card like that is going to be drastically less. What's drastically less? Only time will find out. But that's what that very short term talking about. And right now we are going to start living in it. The Scarlet and Violet returns are coming in. They will start coming in. You'll start to see the market get overly flooded, overly saturated. You're going to see a lot of people doing that race to the bottom. How people do is going to be dependent on that buyer pool. How many people are just buying these cards up as fast as they can? How long does that buying pressure last? I don't know. You know, you could look at a card like I mentioned earlier, Special Livery Charizard. $700 sales, $1,000 sales, $700 sales, $600 sales to $400, $300, $200. Some of the last eBay auctions I've seen sell for is like right around like the $180 to $220 mark. That's a card that dropped from $1,000 down to $220. That is very much in. Then you, with a card like that, you move to the near term. Still a relatively new card. You're still in the near term because those cards are still actively being graded. If you don't believe me, mark it right now. Go look at Special Livery Charizard total graded population today at the time of recording this video, and then check that same population in a week from now and see how many that population increase. I will bet anything in this world that the population increases by greater than 1, meaning that card is still being graded. Supply still hitting the market. So that is the near term. And then when you start speculating into the long term, there's like multiple aspects of the long term. The first part of the long term when you talk about modern product is you talk about stuff that is no longer being printed at distribution. Or sorry, being printed by Pokemon and no longer available at distribution. And that is still like shortish term. And the speculation of, is this stuff still in rotation? Does it still have the ability to be reprinted? And then once you get out of that window and that set is no longer in rotation, no longer has a strong likelihood of being reprinted, then you start moving out of that and you get into more of the long-term play. And then you start to look at what is available supply, what is available then at your local mom and pops, those big eBay sellers, TCG player. What are the quantities people are sitting at? That is when you get into that timeline until eventually you get deep enough and then you start to look at a product like a Crystal Guardians booster box and you say, how many of these Crystal Guardians booster box exist? And then you get into that real long-term window, and that's greater than 10 years. It takes a long time to get there. It's fun to talk about this stuff on every step of the way. But, you know, you talk about a Crystal Guardians booster box, you talk about speculating in it. It's not as fun as talking about a Scarlet and Violet booster box or an Evolving Skies or a Lost Origin or a Silver Tempest, because these are still new. There's still so much... booster boxes like that, products like that, singles like that, graded cards like that, that window is still so small that there's going to be so many movements that it's still fun to talk about. This comes back to what I say. It's just that analysis paralysis, but it's fun. And I hope people enjoy talking about this. But, and people talk about like, Japanese cards and stuff and what's going on with that market. And I told you, everyone always asks me what I think about the Japanese market. And my answer has stayed the same from when I first started this channel to now. The only reason I get very nervous speculating on the Japanese market is because I am not there in Japan. I don't have my ear to the ground enough about that market. I don't know distribution people are getting from Pokemon Center, or not Pokemon Center, from Pokemon, like people that have distribution agreements. I don't know how much of this stuff is really available in store in Japan. I don't know how the distribution is. I don't know how the pre-orders really are. All I really know is English secondary market prices. English secondary market prices, if you haven't got a chance to watch my video where I talk about the $5 clock radio from Walmart, I think it's like, if you go on the actual like videos, it's like probably right before the Cool Train Orion video, I talk about the clock radio. With Japanese booster boxes, every single person that gets their hands on those booster boxes makes money within that chain of people, and it's just too speculative for me. I just don't know enough about it, so I'm very hesitant talking about the Japanese booster boxes. Doesn't mean I don't see what's happening. I don't see crazy prices. I don't see these waifu prices. I don't see these pre-order prices. You know, pre-order prices right now, insane. No doubt about it. Next thing I want to talk about is the Fusion Strike, like, cards that were potentially sent, well, not potentially, it was like, they were sent to a game store down in Texas. What do I think about that? Because that is very, newsworthy right now, even though those photos are very old. Those photos were leaked at the end of 2021, early 2022. So we're over a year removed from when those photos were taken. Those cards were already seized by Pokemon, stuff like this. It is still very amazing how many people think that that photo was taken like last week. No, it's taken a year ago. Those cards are already been like seized. The thing I don't understand most about this, and this is where I'm going to come off like, and people probably won't like this part. The person selling those cards had to be the biggest freaking idiot in the entire world. And I say the same thing about, like, you know, thinking about the Gold Star dogs and stuff. Stupid people. The amount of cards that were on the table, the amount of money that was on that table, those cards could have been trickled into the market for a very, 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 very long time. And whoever was trickling those cards into the market could have had constant paydays for weeks upon years if they were just trickling 1, 2, 3 of each of those artworks into the market every week. Trust me. If 3 or 4 Espeon VMAXs, alt arts from Fusion Strike sell on eBay in a 7-day period, it doesn't throw up like crazy red flags. Anybody could have took a pile of those cards, walked through Collecticon, and offered a very small handful of all those cards at rock bottom prices to every single table at Collecticon, got rid of those cards. People could have drove up and down the coast selling those things, very small batches to game stores, like 2 of each alt art to every single game store up and down the East Coast, West Coast, Mid Central. I have no clue why that person thought it was a smart thing to send those all to one game store. But this is where we're still very lucky. The criminals in this hobby are luckily, thank you God, very stupid. That's all that is. Anybody who tells me that the person selling those Fusion Strike cards made like, because you got to keep in mind, at this point, they are already thieves. They're already crooks. They're already bad people. Those things, clearly stolen from the print facility. Otherwise, Pokemon wouldn't come in and compensate those. They're already bad, evil people. They're already thieves. But luckily, they're dumb. But that also makes me super nervous about like the printing of these cards, because anybody sending all those cards to one game store, as I just mentioned, is a very stupid person. But scarily, they were smart enough to at least somehow smuggle those cards out of the print facility. However they did it, whether those cards got printed, snuck out before they got loaded into the feeders of those machines, whether they got got snuck out during like a QA, QC process, whether those things got stolen as soon as the sheet came out of the printer. They cut those sheets, and as soon as those sheets went into a box, those boxes just instantly made their way out. Either way, the person was at least smart enough in a way to steal those out, which makes me very nervous for like Millennium Print Group or Pokemon or whoever is running these printing facilities, because you let somebody who was dumb enough to sell these cards as a giant lot steal these cards out of your facility. How do you let a stupid person do that? Which makes me very nervous. And then we're starting to see leaks of like Umbreon Gold. Oh my God, I almost said Umbreon Gold Stars. Moonbreons and Rayquazas from Evolving Skies, like those alternative arts, we're already starting to see photos of those, and it looks like they're probably stolen because they weren't sleeved. They just look like a stack. And I've always said this a long time ago. When you look at like that Burning Shadows Charizard, I'm a strong believer in those Burning Shadows Charizards must have got stolen out of the print facility too, because of just how impossibly hard Burning Shadows Charizards were to pull. If you ever actually try to open that product and pull that card, extremely hard card to sell or to pull. So I always say the same thing, like maybe a lot of those cards were stolen. And it's scary though. And it's scary to think that, so these people got caught. What? So now let's have the speculation that I don't think I've ever had personally or seen anybody have a conversation. What if the people didn't get caught? The what ifs. If they didn't get caught and they weren't total morons and they knew how to at least in a way, there's like probably a lot of people out there know how to like laundry money because they're whatever, like doing some super shady stuff like laundering money. There is definitely a way to launder Pokemon cards through the right channels, multiple eBay accounts, troll and toe. I can't talk today. I'm stuttering a lot. Uh, Troll and Toad accounts, TCG player accounts, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, uh, local card shops, collecticons, baseball card conventions, Comic Cons, about 50,000 places in New York City you could just have sold those cards. And like, you're laundering them. You know, you're not selling them as huge lots. You're just spreading these things out. What happens if that did exist? That exact scenario played out. You look at, people have some really poor takes when it comes to the print numbers of a lot of these modern cards. One of those cards that's like a real poor take is I've seen some people throw out crazy numbers, especially talking about like the Moonbreon from Evolving Skies, saying close to like 40% of all the cards ever pulled are graded. Crazy high numbers. We're not even close to that. The amount of, Umbreons that exist not graded far, far exceeds, whatever numbers are graded. But now, what happens if that is now doesn't really become the case? What if somebody is just constantly trickling in Moonbreons to PSA week after week, month after month, year after year? Because at this point now, you could just wait and you could be patient on these cards. Think somebody steals this. I mean, some of those stacks I was seeing. So, like, I'll give you an example. This is about 30 cards. That's not a lot. Those stacks we were seeing in those photos of those Fusion Strike, they were far bigger than this stack of 30 cards. They were hundreds. Imagine if somebody had 1,000 Moonbreons. 1,000 Moonbreons in like one of those long white boxes isn't out of the realm of impossible. We saw how many existed. We saw those piles. So we got 1,000 Moonbreons. You grade those at $15 to $30. That's $100,000 worth of Moonbreons. What is 100,000? Assuming those hit 10s or 9s or whatever. What is 1,000 more of those Moonbreons do to the market? It's hard to say. I would say right now, if you graded, are doing to the market very little bit. But now you have somebody with just thousands upon thousands of those, slowly just doing the race to the bottom, or maybe not even a super fast race to the bottom. They're just always the lowest price listed. Always. So their cards are just always selling. And then that person also has so many of these cards raw that they sprinkle them throughout different LGSs and different Facebook groups and different collecticons and all these other avenues they could have sprinkled those cards to just to get the raw prices out of them. So now every single person they sold it to at a collecticon, trust me, you walk up to most collecticon tables with an Espeon VMAX alternative art from Fusion Strike, the person you sell that to at that table at Collecticon is probably not going to take that card and immediately flip it raw. They might, but the high likelihood is that they're going to take that minty raw copy you handed them or sold to them, and they're going to grade that card themselves. So then all those people are now grading. Population reports are exponentially increasing that way. Just this absolute, like a boulder rolling down a hill effect, or maybe a snowball rolling down a hill effect would be a better analogy. That little snowball at first, and every time it rolls, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until eventually you got more or less a landslide of one giant snowball rolling down the hill. That would be the worst case scenario for something like that, where you don't have somebody who's a total idiot handling these cards. What does that do for the longevity of a set? Because what is sealed product in reality? How far is it removed from the value of the product inside? You can make the argument, you look at certain sets, you look at like Emergent Powers, or you look at a Steam Seizure, you look at a Crimson Invasion, you look at what the value of some of the cards inside those sets are in relative to the sealed product price. And there is this huge disparity. But for modern stuff, when you look at your most expensive sets and then you start to look at like the hit cards, it's usually not that drastic. Sure, we're starting to see it pull away a little bit with like Sword and Shield and Rebel Clash, or Sword and Shield base and Rebel Clash. But still, if you have all these cards hitting the market, especially in raw form and graded forms, it could pull down prices for product for years, years, like a decade. That is a scary thought, to think that one person out there could potentially have the ability to pull down the entire market cap of a product for like a decade. That is a scary thought. And anybody out there who thinks that's not a scary thought, that there is a possibility that somebody out there could potentially be manipulating the price of a super mass produced modern product, because really the argument should be it's impossible to truly, like, at the highest of ends, like, manipulate modern prices. Because really, when you think about it, the reason why it should almost be impossible because of how many of these cards exist. Tens of thousands of Moonbryons exist, tens of thousands. It's really hard for one person to pull down the prices of it. But then when that one person has the same equivalence in hits as it would take you, I mean, just that pile of Espeons from Fusion Strike, let's just say on a high end, and this is a stretch, 2 per case, which in reality, to pull an Espeon VMAX alternative art from Fusion Strike is probably more likely 1 per case or less. But let's just say 2 per case. They had greater than 1,000 of those. I just told you this is a stack of 30 cards. Their stacks were massively larger than this, and there were 2 stacks. So you can be talking about hundreds to thousands of cases worth of hits. Not worth of cards, worth of hits. So it would have took somebody 1,000 cases to, maybe more, potentially more. More than 1,000 cases. Either way, a lot of cases of booster boxes. And so the argument should always be, well, it's impossible for anybody to open that much. So if nobody could open that much, there's no way you can manipulate modern prices that much. That all gets thrown out the window with that much product. So it's a scary thought. It's a scary thought to think about the amount of power one person could, in theory, have if they were not an absolute moron. Because let's just do worst case scenario. Let's just imagine that person never got caught, never did that, and they were just doing that, just trickling cards into the market for the last year's time. They would have had 12 months at this point of trickling those cards into the market. That is a scary thought. Unregulated markets. Pokemon's an unregulated market. That is a scary thought. And now people ask, are those why you didn't get hits? Is that why your Fusion Strike was rough to pull? I don't really know. I'm leaning towards probably not. It doesn't make sense that, because Rattle has a great video showing how those cards get loaded into the machine in those white boxes. It does make a little bit less sense that somebody would be able to pull the hits out of that automatic sorter, because once that automatic sorter goes empty, it's more or less going to slow down the process. It's not going to keep printing. It's going to wait for you to reload that sleeve or magazine, or that's what they kind of look like. It looks like a magazine of cards, but it's going to stop. It's not going to keep printing, or printing's a bad word because the cards are already printed. It's not going to insert the cards if those cards are missing. So that doesn't make sense to where the cards would be stolen. I do believe that the cards were stolen at some point along the line before that. Now, it could just be as simple as all these, boxes just get stored in a storeroom. And that storeroom, there's a few people that either have the key to it, or that storeroom is just left unlocked throughout the day because people are constantly going in and out. And somebody just walked in one day. Maybe we're giving people too much credit. Maybe it was just like the janitor. Because I think about it all the time. If I was going to sneak that many cards out of the print facility, how would you do it? You got to put that thing in a trash bag and walk out, and then throw that trash bag in the dumpster, and then go pick it up at the end of the day. You can't just walk out with boxes of cards in your hand like this and go, hey guys, I'm just walking to my car real quick. I got to put something in my back seat. Like, it could have just been the janitor. Could have been the janitor just going, oh my God, these are the hits. I know what Pokemon hits are. They're the shiny textured stuff. And he's just loaded a bunch of them into a black trash bag, wheeled his little trash cart out with his little broom sticking out like a freaking scammer, and just roll up to the dumpster and just place that bag right in there. And then at the end of the day, when nobody was really looking, he knew where the cameras were placed, knew that nobody had a camera on the freaking dumpster, and just backed up his 1999 Honda Civic and just loaded up his Civic and just drove away. And his exhaust was super loud. It sounded like somebody shoved a screwdriver, and he's just like, wee! And he's just like, oh my God, I got $100,000 worth of Pokemon cards in my trunk. Maybe it was that simple. I don't know. I don't know how you sneak that much stuff out unless it's in trash bags. I really just don't know. I mean, anybody's speculation is as good as any, I guess. How else would you get that much product out? You know, maybe there's the guy who like breaks down cardboard boxes and shoves them in the baler all day. And like somebody accidentally rolled a pallet full of those cards and they didn't remove the cards. Like they just made like a mistake. And the guy was like, well, I'm not going to break down all these. I'm just going to remove all these boxes before I break down this cardboard. And I'm just going to walk it right out the side door instead of stacking all this shit into the baler and just crushing it. I don't know. I don't know how all those cards sneak out. I would think that there's security at these print facilities, but probably not too. Because... And then it goes back to super mass produced promos and stuff. Special livery Charizard, I always say, like, worse. The scariest thing to think of is you think about how many ancient Mews exist still to this day. Ancient Mews exist in the hundreds to thousands in people's collections. I think Dan Catchmole Collectibles, he just bought like 300 or 400 of them. Don't quote me on the numbers. It's something like that. Just from Z&G Emporium. Z&G James showed an entire pile of Ancient Mews because those cards were just handed out at movie theaters. But now, what happens if you had somebody working at, Pokemon Center distribution and their job was you order your 3-pack blister of Brilliant Stars on PokemonCenter.com and 2 packs of cards in order to hit $20, and their job was just to put special livery Charizards in every single box? What if they were just like stuffing special livery Charizards up their sleeves and stuff? And they were doing it with special livery Pikachus. They did it with a ton of special livery Bidoof, and they did it with a ton of special livery Charizards. And they just walked out and they just have hundreds upon hundreds of sealed special livery Pikachus, Bidoofs, and Charizards. How scary is that? We've seen it happen with modern. We've now definitely seen it happen with vintage with the Gold Star dogs. It's scary. And these, like, extra supplies, we know exist, too. You talk to a guy like Gary King Pokemon. What is one of the things Gary King Pokemon talks about all the time? Gary King Pokemon talks about when he would open unlimited packs, a lot of his cards would just have, like, poor, quality control. Print lines, whitening, edges, issues, and he would take those cards and he would send them to the Wizard of the Coast. And at Wizard of the Coast, they had a warehouse, or maybe a warehouse is a bad word, but they had like an entire storage room of extra copies of cards. And so Gary would send him his Damage Unlimited Hollows, and then Wizard of the Coast would send Gary back Shadowless Hollows. Really super clean, minty ones. And Gary's talked about this. This is how Gary has gotten a lot of his super clean, like, Shadowless Hollows, because it came from that Wizard of the Coast storage room. So we know, even for this vintage stuff, storage rooms of this product existed. We know that. There are people that have, and don't forget, one of the things about, like, the storage rooms of WotC's is not only did they act as storage rooms, they also, Wizard of the Coast employees used to get employee credits, and they would use those employee credits to go to, like, their company store, which again was just more or less a big closet, and then they would be able to use like $100 of store credit, company credit, whatever, to pick up a booster box here and there. And that storeroom was full of stuff. What happened to that storeroom when WotC stopped printing stuff? That storeroom went somewheres. They didn't give it out. They didn't give all of it out. They gave a lot of it out at the Fan Appreciation Tour in June of 2000, or May or June of 2003, when they did the Fan Appreciation Tour. They wheeled out pallets of booster boxes for the first place winner. We know that. We have firsthand accounts from people like Joe Echo Base Collectible, who in 10th place for prize support got 10 booster boxes of Skyridge. But he tells the story of them wheeling out a pallet pallet. You know how many? There's like 600 booster boxes on a pallet of just WotC booster boxes. So WotC booster boxes, 600 booster boxes, that means that pallet had on it, which is a crazy thought to think of. Had base set, had jungle, had fossil, base set 2, had Team Rocket, had Gym Heroes, Gym Challenge, all the Neos, Legendary Collection, Expedition, Aquapolis, and it had a shitload of Skyridge on it. 600 booster boxes in total. You know how much money you put a price on that nowadays? That was prize support for first place, was a pallet. They said the kid couldn't even carry it all out. He needed help to break down the pallet and just carry out cases of booster boxes. So we know that a lot of this stuff exists. Where it all went, though, with the exception of what was handed out that we know of for prize support, no one knows. What happened to all these Black Star promos? There's a lot of Black Star promos that we think might still exist, but they're not, especially when you start to think about more like the more niche Black Star promos, the ones that were handed out in like Top Deck magazine and stuff like that. Those are the ones that are kind of like, how were the distribution of those handed out? Sure, there was one added per magazine and shipped out, but they probably printed way more of those than they shipped out the magazines. There was probably just somebody working at the magazine facility either took all these cards home or maybe, and the thing we kind of hope for is that they just didn't realize there was any value to these, because at that point they're just bulky Black Star promos, like WotC promos weren't worth a lot of money in 2000 to 2003. They just weren't worth a lot of money. So hopefully maybe they just assigned no value to them and all those things kind of just went the way of the trash can. Who knows? There's so many what ifs, so many questions, so much of that analysis paralysis that goes on. I mean, even like in the highest of tiers, the Japanese trophy card market, you start to look at like numbers we think of cards, we know for a fact there are extras of certain trophy cards that shouldn't possibly exist, because we literally know all the winners and we could identify all the winners' cards. And not only trophy cards, especially you think about illustrator contest cards. There are illustrator contest winners out there who exist, who we know extras of their cards exist, and they have never sold one, meaning that they was only ever snuck out of the facility. So cards sneaking out of the facility is not a new Pokemon thing. This is about as Pokemon as it gets in a weird way. So okay, anyways, now I'm going to scroll up to the top, and I'm probably going to keep going to the bottom. All right, Drew said, I see we got number 1 mod in the game. Cadel, Steven, good to see you. Billy and Rubik's. Billy says, I really just want to center your camera on your face to the middle of the screen. Listen, I've tried. I don't really know how to get this camera to the center. I have to like sit up more, maybe. Like sit up, but I'm too lazy to do that. Sorry, Billy. Yeah, Chevals, I appreciate you calling me. It was Chevals who got my attention when my mic wasn't on the original stream. Sun Goanda said, people on Reddit expect to retire great in reverse holos. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I've seen some really crazy hot takes. People are saying my camera framing's like a CGC 8.5 centering. Nice. Clever comment there, Mr. Dan Catchwell Collectibles. Drew said, podcast this Friday with Rattle and CTR. Yes, podcast this Friday. We are going to have a special guest. This special guest has never been on the channel before, so that doesn't really narrow it down much. But I think a lot of people know who he is. It's going to be a very exciting live if he joins, which he said he will, but we'll see. Kevin Clare said, PK back on his vintage shit, Skull and Crossbones. Listen, everybody says I hate modern. I don't hate modern. Doesn't matter how much modern I talk about. People are always going to say I hate it. Even though I tell you I buy cases of this stuff, I'm investing in this stuff, I'm flipping singles, people don't care. And then I'll pull out a case of something and they'll be like, oh, look at that. fucking PK's been buying Modern this whole time. It's like, yeah, no shit, I've been buying Modern this whole time. I've been showing it and talking about it for months now. But people are just like, oh my god, look, he's buying it, but he's not talking about it. It's like, okay, I'm talking about it. If anything, I talk about it way too much. I just talked about freaking Brilliant Stars reprints, if they're pretty lackluster, picking up Brilliant Stars booster box on PokemonCenter.com in today's video. Let's see. Yeah, people are saying Breakpoint. Yeah, Breakpoint does have a Gyarados, so I was wrong. PokeKid96 says, what up, PK? Appreciate you, man. Cheval says, I know a whale that had a big amount of VMAX Climax boxes and got nervous about the price drop and got rid of them all. He won a lot elsewhere, so no biggie, but let's say it wasn't his best play. So I think, Chevals, I know who you're talking about, and I'm pretty sure Rusty bought a lot of those VMAX Climax boxes. But if the whale you're talking about is the same whale I think you're talking about, he's sitting just fine. I think a lot of that is just sometimes moving stuff. I mean, just the amount of cards he graded with PSA before they shut down, I think the number he threw out there was 30,000 slabs he sent the PSA. So the whale you're talking about, Chevals, I think he's doing just fine, if you're talking about the same person I am. DeGreen Collectibles, good to see you, Josh. Josh, a good buddy of mine. He has a good channel. If you guys haven't had a chance, check out DeGreen Shiz Collectibles channel. He's a good guy. He's one of the good ones in the hobby. He said right after Dan's video today, he had to check the status of Express PSA sub. 1 hour later, he got an email from them saying it's complete. I think people, I don't do it as much anymore, but there's sometimes you're really checking that PSA submission. When I had my special delivery, not special delivery, Charizard UPC plays, I was checking those statuses way too often. I was super nervous. I was like, race to the bottom, checking that every day, just typing it in. So Trapper Paul says, I see you switch to Coronas. I'm going to switch to Coronas for the near term. Maybe I won't be a Bud Light guy for the near term, unless Bud Light could figure out what they're doing. But I do like a Corona. Speak about a Corona. Watery Bear Gang in the chat. It's a lime. Anybody see Creator Clash? Leonhardt in the boxing match. Cool Trainer Ryan must have been the happiest freaking dude that ever existed. As soon as the fight was over, I text Ryan. But you guys should join the Rattle Happy Hour chat. So we were all watching that Creator Clash live in the Rattle Happy Hour. So I think there was like 20, 25 people were in there watching it live. And it was a lot of fun. And if you guys haven't had a chance to join those Rattle Happy Hours, they're a lot of fun. When it comes to typing, I'm one of the worst typers that ever existed. Because I'm very, very bad at putting my thoughts into words, which is very ironic because at work I write a lot of like technical reports, but technical reports are very different than like putting out my thoughts into words. But I'm much better at least like vocalizing that. So if you guys ever want to like have a conversation with me, the best place to talk to me is definitely the Rattle Discord. And there's so many smart people in there. You know, obviously Rattle's in there, but you know, there's people like Rage is in there all the time, and Rage is just, his intelligence is just on like a very next level type stuff. So there's a lot of very, very smart people in there. A lot of people drop in and out all the time. So if you ever want to like shoot questions off people or just even bounce ideas off people, like there's a lot of good resources in those happy hour chats that I definitely recommend you guys joining. So we got one of the absolute OGs in the chat. Goes by the name of Mr. Australian Blastoise. It's good to see you, Mr. Australian Blastoise. I haven't talked to you in a while, man. Australian Blastoise, though, he had some plays for a while. I think one of the things we talk about that's okay, that's a stretch. But one of the things we've mentioned is the Team Rocket briefcase cards. You know, Giovanni's Persian and the Here Comes Team Rocket card. Australian Blastoise was way ahead of the curve on a lot of that stuff. And that the Lowland Friend cards. Oh my god, I always forget. Master Battle, is that what it's called? The Master Battle case. I really need to at least look this up to know what it's called. But like the Lowland Friends cards, uh, Australian Blastoise was way, 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 way ahead of the curve on plays like that than a lot of people. He made some really good plays. I think you. What did you pick up? Which Umbreon? You picked up a really good. Was it Unseen Forces Umbreon? You had a really good Umbreon pickup too. I remember. Missing Number Collectible says, "How's it going, PK?" It's going pretty good. Pokemon Collector said, "Hola, PK. Hope you're doing well, man. Doing good." Mr. Mimus French says, "Only quality cut cards in Scarlet and Violet are in the thin foil wrappers. The new thick ones have the junk scissor hand shit." Yeah, I've heard that there's different like packaging to Scarlet and Violet. I haven't really like tested that, but I've definitely heard that they might have had like a packaging issue. Roxandy, good to see you in the chat, Roxandy. Roxandy puts out some good content. If you guys are not subscribed, that's another channel I recommend. He's a up and coming channel, but he's doing pretty good. I don't even like to call him up and coming anymore. He's chugging along. Dan Catchmall Collectibles got a great channel. Let's see. Yamamoto says, "I think he will because he's a stand-up guy. Just don't like drama in Pokemon." If you're talking about like any of the drama, you should watch my short. If you're that's what I think you're talking about, watch my short, and that will probably answer any like drama questions for people. And it was just my most recent short. Yeah. Fresh Tat says that stack got bigger. No, it's the same stack, man. It hasn't gotten any bigger. Cheval says, "Question: How do I get hired by the printing facility asking for a friend? For a reason." What's minimum wage? Minimum wage is, I don't think any jobs hire at minimum wage anymore. What do you think you make at a printing facility? $25 an hour, $30 an hour, maybe less, maybe more. But let's just say $25, $30 an hour, and you steal 3 of whatever the chase cards is per day. Chases of most sets are around $100 to $200. You steal $100 to $200 cards 3 times a day. That's between $300 to $600 a day. You add it on to your daily salary. So a print facility guy working the product line, driving a forklift at $25, $30 an hour, he is pocketing $300 a day. Works 5 days a week. That's $1,500 potentially per day. Holy crap. That guy's salary just went up $1,500 per week. And now if he gets greedy and says, instead of pocketing 3 of these chase cards a day, I want to pocket 6 of these chase cards a day. So now that person's salary has gone up $3,000 per week. So now he's making $25, $30 an hour, making his, weekly salary. But then on top of that, so there's 4 weeks per month at $3,000, he adds on $12,000 a month onto his salary by stealing 6 cards a day. $12,000 is a lot of money for people. And then people could really, really quickly start to become super, super jaded by money. And if that's, I don't know, how hard is it to put 6 cards in your pocket? I don't know. It seems like it's easy after we saw that photo. Pokey Snipe says, "I live for PK Gulps. Watery Bear Gang." Where you at? Kevin Clear says, "They probably ask you if you watch cartoons, and if your answer is no, you're hired." Yeah. All vintage, no modern. He says, "I finally caught another PK Live. Let's go." So Steve Coleman saying that they could potentially have like reloaded it with hollows of other cards. Yeah, that's possible. It's just, I don't know. I just don't know the logistics. I think that's the hardest part. Unless we could get somebody from a print facility, which we probably never would. But like, let's say we could. It would just be asked in the logistics of like, okay, where is that machine that loads the cards and, like stuffs packs? Where is that located in relative to the facility? Is that smack dab in the middle of the facility, or is that right next to the emergency exit? That the emergency exit, if you hit the bar, the alarm doesn't go off. It's just an emergency exit. People go out and take their smoking breaks outside, and there's a picnic table right next to that emergency exit. How close to that emergency exit is there? Like, there's so many questions. How many cameras? Is there anybody watching the cameras? Is there only one guy watching the cameras? Do you only have to make friends with one person, the one camera watcher, and just be like, hey, buddy, I'm going to steal $200,000 worth of hits today. So do me a favor. Don't say anything, and I'll slip you $20,000, because I don't know how much the unarmed security at a freaking print facility makes. But again, it's probably 25 to like $35 an hour for unarmed security at a print facility. You just told somebody, hey, I'm going to give you $20,000 cash if you just look the other way on the camera, or go take a piss break between 12:21 and 12:23 this morning. Like, it could just be that easy. I don't know. Some Ocean's 11 type shit where like the guy's coming in through the ceiling, and you get the team together, and it's like, God damn it, you know what? I'm in. And everybody, it's just like, do the montage, the Ocean 11 montage of all the different print facility workers, and to like scam all those cards, and it's like, I'm in. Maybe. Probably not. It's probably not that exciting. It's probably super simple, like how they snuck this out. And it was just like a huge, huge oversight from the printing facility. Trapper Paul says, PK sounds like he may have been a janitor at some point. I've had a lot of jobs in my life, Trapper Paul. I have never been a janitor. But I have nothing bad to say about janitors at all, man. I knew a school janitor. Nice city job. He was a cop, retired as a cop, got a job as a janitor, collected 2 pensions. Nothing wrong with that, man. Solid work. People are saying PK confirmed as Millennium Print Group janitor. No, that is not correct. Kevin Clare says, the Pokemon Center didn't respond to my email when I demanded an internal investigation into employees stealing special delivery Charizard codes. Yeah. Crap, there's 177 people watching this. Why are you doing that? Listen, I appreciate every single one of you guys. Every single one of you guys that tuned in, I appreciate you. Listening to these lives, listening to me talk for an hour and 7 minutes about just ranting craziness, because I saw one eBay auction sold today for double what it should have, and for greater than 80 to 90% what the closest buy it now was. All that just made me lose my mind today, because I do have analysis paralysis. With that said, guys, appreciate every single one of you. As always, I don't ask for anything. I only ask you to do 2 things. 1, hit that like button if you haven't already. And number 2, if you're not subscribed and you made it to the end of an hour and 8-minute long video, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Other than that, as always, I'll catch you on the next video.